Good morning, Celebration Spiritual Center. Good morning. Let us stand as we prepare to open our service with prayer. And can we please, no walking? Please, thank you. And our prayer champion, Vanessa, will lead us in prayer this morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Let's relax into these beautiful bodies of ours and bring ourselves to the here and now of this beautiful place. I am knowing, Mother, Father, God, that you are the one presence, you are the one source, you are the one power and wisdom that is all of life, that is all of living, that is moving through each and everything that I could know of and well beyond what I could ever know, Mother, Father, God, for you are the knower of all things. And you are holding all existence and all this love and all this light and all this perfection and wholeness, Mother, Father, God. How beautiful it is to know you on this summer day. How beautiful it is to know you in each and every person that is in this room and within the sound of my voice. How beautiful it is to know you in every part of his body that is living us up here and now, closer than our very breath you are, Mother, Father, God. And I know what I am made of today. I know that I am united with that which is perfect and whole and complete, always, at all times, in all places, and in all circumstances, Mother, Father, God. And so in knowing this, I release any fear, any doubt, any worry I ever could have had of something going wrong, of anything not being enough. It's just not true. It's not true because nothing that is lack exists. And so I'm knowing that all is well in the arms of God today. All is well in the harmony of God today. All is well in the wisdom of God today. All is well in the joy of God today. All is well in the God that is every piece and every aspect of the life that I am living, of every space that I am occupying, of every circumstance that is here now and that is to come, Mother, Father, God. And so I'm so happy to know this. I'm so happy to know the truth. I'm so happy to be in alignment with that force that inspires me to demonstrate the love that you are, the joy that you are, the creativity that you are, Mother, Father, God. And I'm so excited to see how it will manifest here today at Celebration Spiritual Center, how it will manifest in the word of CSC, in the music of CFC, in the hugs of my brothers and sisters of CSC, Mother, Father, God, how I will carry it in this perfect vessel that you have made of me, to know it now and to know it tomorrow and to know it well into the week. As I manifest myself into this life you have laid before me and laid before all of us, I am knowing that all is well. I'm so joyful in this knowledge. And it is this that I'm offering, that which answers perfectly and which provides abundantly. And it is with so much faith in this joy that we move forward with this day and with this service with Amen. Ashe. Ashe. So it is. So it is. Woo!
And so we celebrate being right here, right now, in the present moment. The past is gone, the future is yet to come, and we are here now. Yes, yes? I can feel my feet on the ground. I'm in the present moment now. What a joyful place I found. Here in the present moment now. At the door, opening to more love and joy. Celebrate with me now. We are in the present moment now. Here we are. Let's take a breath. And we sing, I breathe in, I breathe out, I'm in the present moment now. I breathe in, I breathe out, I'm in the present moment now. Here in the present, problems seem so strong. Here in the present, all my trials fall. so small. Here in the presence of all my giants. Oh, we are living the power of
God that knows how it created you and it never changed its mind about you. God that sees your perfection, your perfection, your perfection, your perfection, your perfection. Take that in. Because this God that I'm talking about knows what it created, never changed its mind, sees you as sinless, sinless, sinless. Never changed its mind. I don't know how many times I can say that without somebody jumping up at me. Because that's good news. That means that this God is unconditional love. It is a vibration. It is an energy. It is a life force that permeates all things, including you. And it did not say it would keep a list of your mistakes. Somebody else told you that. God didn't say that. Why would it keep a list of mistakes about something it made perfect, total, complete? Yes. So if you're keeping a list of mistakes, let them go now. There's not a God in the sky. This is not Santa Claus we're talking about. We're talking about a life force, an energy, an unconditional love. So let it go now. So that you can be in the joy of creation, so you can hear the inspired ideas, so you can move today from that place of joy. At CSC, we also believe that everything is spiritual. Everything. That includes your cell phones. So what I need you to do is spiritualize your cell phone. Put it on vibrate. But if something moves you or touches you, put it out there on Facebook and Twitter. Let people know where you are. Not just where you're sitting, but where you are in consciousness. All minds are joined. And so you never know how you're going to impact another life. Put it out there. And if you received one of these blue connection cards, please fill it out, turn it over on the back, including your email, drop it in with your offering, and we'll put you on our mailing list. We are in year 6 at CSC. All right. And when we first thought this idea, Pastor Greg and I, we said we wanted to create a place that felt like home. That when you came to this place, if anything, the first time you came, you were a guest. You would never be a visitor. And when you come back to this place, you would be at home. First time you come, you're a guest, and when you come back, you're family, you're at home. So if we have any first-time guests, please stand briefly. First-time guests. Welcome. And remember, the first time you come to CSC, you're a what? Yes. And when you come back, you're what? Family. All right, let's stand and treat each other like family. We are a family, like a giant tree, branching out towards the sky. We are a family.
today as a family, show of hands, how many people have something to be thankful for, to be grateful for? Show of hands, how many people know that an attitude of gratitude is what brings more good into your life? And when you focus on what you have and you're grateful for it, that you have will be multiplied. Yes, it will. That is the principle. And so we're going to just live in this vibration of gratitude and sing, I am grateful. Gratitude and appreciation is the same vibration. And I celebrate. I am grateful. I am grateful. And I'm thankful. I am thankful. I appreciate. I appreciate the light of the sun and the air that I breathe. And I celebrate being here with all of you. I am grateful. And I'm thankful. I appreciate. And I celebrate this life that I'm living. I celebrate. I appreciate being able to stand on my own. I celebrate. And I celebrate. I celebrate. All of the love, all of the joy, all of the peace. And I celebrate the gift of life. I appreciate. And I celebrate. Now a grateful heart leads to a grateful mind, which leads to a grateful life. That's how it works. If you don't have a gratitude journal, I invite you to start it today. Before you go to sleep, write down the 3 things that you're grateful for that took place on this day. And when you wake up in the morning, write 3 things that you're grateful for. And tenors, what will happen? Grateful heart. Grateful mind. I am more time. Everybody, I am. Put your hand on your heart and sing. I am grateful.
Grateful this morning. Good rising, CSC. Good rising. My name is Gabby, and I am so very happy to see each and every one of you today. One thing that you will learn about CSC is that our vision, our mission, and our purpose guide everything that we do. The vision. Celebration Spiritual Center is a God experience that turns on the heart, mind, and soul of the world. A God experience is the realization of oneness that transcends material sense. Our mission and purpose is to awaken the world to the presence of God within and all around us. Celebrate this truth as one family. Embody unconditional love. Equip humanity to live our greatest lives and serve all creation. The centering thought for this month's meditation is, I feel the love of God within me now. And the song for the month is Bliss. We continue with the July message series, The Wonderful World of Wisdom, Pixar. Pastor Greg's topic today is, do you know the whole story? And now it's time for your CSC news and updates. Let's spread the word about CSC. Today we're going to try a new way to invite all our friends to church at once. Now, if you have a smartphone, take it out. Take it out. And then open to the Facebook app. Okay? Now, once there, tap Check In. Select Celebration Spiritual Center. Type the status if you want. And then press Post. And just like that, you just let all your friends know about CSC. Summer hours are back to CSC, y'all. So that means doors open at 10 a.m. and service begins promptly at 10:30 a.m. Summer hours will be observed through the end of August, so come early, get your spiritual food, and then do something fun and relaxing with the rest of your day. Come get clarity about what's going on in your life. Pastor Greg, Pastor Yolanda are here to support you in applying what you learn at CSC to your daily life experiences. So join us next Sunday, July 28th at 12:30 p.m. for God Talk. No question is off limits. Start your day by knowing the truth of who and whose you are. PG and PY and the Prayer Champions pray with us and for us every Wednesday morning at 7 a.m. Call details can be found at the member services table on our website and social media. Connect with us this Wednesday and advance confidently into your week. Text to give. It's fast, it's easy, and it's secure. Text your dollar amount to 347-744-9500. Then follow the prompts. Minimum donation is $10. Again, the phone number is 347-744-9500. Try it out today. Now, just a few short housekeeping reminders. Food and drink is not allowed in the sanctuary except for water. However, we do ask that you keep your beverage covered. Also, no audio or video recording is permitted during service. And now we have an announcement from Pastor Greg. But before that, thank you, and we'll see you next week.
Good morning again, everyone. I will keep this very brief. Of course, you all know it's summer. You know it's summer because we're in the midst of a heat wave. And one of the powerful things about summer, it actually has a beautiful energy that can support you in achieving your vision and meeting your goals and whatever it is that you want to achieve in 2019. Just as we know that the fall and winter are the internal months, that's the time that we use with 90 Days to Greatness in the fall and winter to go within and develop our ideas for the new year. Well, the spring and summer are the external months. Those are the times when we should be active. And so I want to encourage you to use this energy to actually fulfill your goals. Use this active time, this bright, loud, wonderful energy of summer, and actually achieve your goals. Now, for many of us, we may have gotten stuck this year. We may feel a block, or we may not really be sure which way we want to go. And so what I'm doing for the summer is I've put together what I'm calling a Summer Inspired Action Session. And in that session, it's discounted 20%, and in that session, I will support you in actually activating your vision and actually coming up with a plan to implement whatever it is that you want to implement, or support you in removing blocks if that's what you need to do, or we can do a visioning session. And so if you're interested, all you have to do is just send me a message, send me an email. My email address is pastorgreg@celebrationsc.org, or you can hit me up on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, wherever, I'm on all the social channels. So just reach out to me, and I'll send you a link to a form where I ask you a few questions to get a better idea of what it is that you want to do, and we'll set up your session. We only have 50 slots, and I've been doing sessions every week, so people all over are signing up. So if you're remotely interested, you have between now and the end of the summer to sign up. So at least reach out to me, fill out the form, so that you can get the ball rolling, all right? If you have any questions, just come and see me. Beautiful.
Well, we have come to the time in our service that we lovingly refer to as the meditation experience. In the beginning, when PG and I were in the process of creating this, we knew we wanted to have a time in service that we stopped all the external conversation, that we closed our eyes and that we took a breath into the realization that God is right where we are. We don't have to look for God. We don't have to chase for God. We don't even have to be better for God. And we don't have to read every book that has ever been written by every New Thought author, by everyone on Super Soul Sunday. Because that is acquiring knowledge, and I'm all for knowledge. But the only way to know God is to feel God. You gotta feel God. You gotta feel God right where you are. And God is not gonna quiz you on what you know about God. Right? God's not gonna quiz you. It's gonna love you and say, finally, you came home. So let us close our eyes and feel this reality of God within us. We're gonna close our eyes, we're gonna bring our feet to the floor. And if we're holding anything on our lap, we're gonna go ahead and release that so that there's no impediment to our connection. And as we bring our feet to the floor, we relax our toes, we relax our ankles. And as we surrender the feet, we feel a sensation of relaxation right there underneath our feet, connecting us to the floor. And so we let the feet just relax into the earth. We let the back rest against the chair and realize that we are being supported, literally and figuratively, right where we are. And as we relax the feet and allow the back to rest, we feel an energy alive within us, traveling up the legs, up the calves, up the shins, across the knees, across the thighs. The energy travels and it settles in the seat. Relax the hips. And from this place of relaxation, we feel it travel up our spine, crossing each chakra as it travels up, out the crown of our head. And we imagine that energy connecting with the energy to our left and to our right, and then transcending down our spine, across our third eye, down our throat, and rooting us to the earth. And from this uplifted but grounded place, we bring our focus to the right palm and imagine the energy collected there. And together we're going to inhale on the right side, inhale all the way up the right side, and exhale down the left side. Beautiful, nice and slow. Inhale up the left side, and exhale down the right. Inhale up the right side, and exhale down the left. Inhale up the left side, and exhale down the right. One more round on your own. Inhale up, and exhale down. Inhale up, exhale down. Bring the journey, letting every voice but the voice that is love, peace, and bliss, let it be still now. With our eyes still closed, we notice any quiet that we felt on the inside. And as we focus on that quiet, that peace, that bliss, it grows. We solidify this feeling and remember it and carry it. We remember how easy it is to just close our eyes and feel you, God. Know that we can do it any time. It is said that if you ask, it is given. And any time, we can ask for joy. We can ask for peace. And we can ask for bliss anytime. Just notice. Just notice. Eyes closed, notice.
There are so many things taking place in our world, in our nation, and I don't know about you, but I'm disturbed by many of those things. But I recognize that if I'm disturbed, there's a call within me. There's a call to be love. If I'm disturbed, there's a call within me to be the light of the world. If I'm disturbed, there's a call within me to take inspired action. And so I recognize as that is true, it is time for us to no longer talk about the spiritual teachers, to no longer talk about Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, Muhammad, whoever your preferred teacher is, but it's time for us to become them. They lived their life, they had their time, they made the changes that they made, but you may be the only Jesus that anybody will ever see. So it's time for each and every one of us to become the Christ in our lives and transform the world. Okay, put your hands together. You are the light of the world, a bright and shining star. It's time to shine your light, let the world know who you are. We've done a lot of talking, it's time to start walking. Change your words into actions, you'd be amazed at what would happen. We have signed t-shirts and posters asking all the Jesus do. Well, it's more than just a slogan. Take the next step and do what he do. Be Jesus to somebody. You may be the only Jesus they'll ever see. Be Jesus to somebody. You may be the only Jesus they'll ever see. You were not called to just sit around with the truth. Take what you learned and know. Tell somebody's been called. See, we've done a lot of talking. Now it's time to start walking. Change your words into actions. You'd be amazed at what would happen. Oh, we have signed t-shirts and posters asking all the Jesus. Well, it's more than just a slogan. Take the next step and do what he do. God saying, yeah, be Jesus to somebody. You may be the only Jesus they'll ever see. Be Jesus to somebody. You may be the only Jesus they'll ever see. We're gonna sing it again. Be Jesus to somebody. You may be the only Jesus they'll ever see. You are the light of the world. You may be the only Jesus they'll ever see. Clap it out. Let's clap it out. The truth is you are the Jesus of this time. The truth is you have the same power. So we're going to let this mind that was in Christ Jesus also be in us. We're going to let this love that was also in Christ Jesus be in us. We're going to let this life that was also in Christ Jesus be Jesus to someone. Be Buddha, be Krishna. Be Jesus to someone. Be the prophet. Muhammad. Be Jesus to someone. We're going to sing it again. Be Jesus to be Jesus, yeah. Be Jesus to someone. Be Buddha. Be Krishna. Hey. And so it is. And so it is. I was thinking back as we were singing, that song came to me a long time ago when I was in seminary. So that was back, I think, in 2000. And it was the beginning of me shifting my understanding. You know, I went into seminary thinking I knew something about something. And my whole world was shaken up. And as I started to come into a deeper understanding, not only of Jesus, but then that turned me to looking at so many other teachings. That was one of the first songs that I wrote. I kind of always, my songwriting always parallels my thinking and my understanding. And so when something hits me and crystallizes in my mind, I usually end up codifying that in a song. And so when I hear that song, and so when I hear that song, it takes me back through that journey. And it's beautiful because this is part of a big piece of what we're going to be talking about today, how our journey takes us into a new understanding and in places that we did not think we were going to end up. Now, just as a recap, we are in our series, The Wonderful World of Wisdom, Pixar. And so we're using the wisdom and inspiration of Pixar films to talk about some spiritual ideas. We started in week 1 using the movie A Bug's Life, Stand Up and Be Counted. And that movie shows us something powerful about the collective. That actually in that movie, the grasshoppers appeared to be the ones that were powerful, but it was because the ants didn't realize the power that they had. And when they banded together, they realized that they had more power than the grasshoppers. And last week, we used the movie Monsters, Inc. Monsters, Inc. is a world that was created, actually powered by fear. It's a world that was powered by the screams of children. And we find that there's a scream shortage, and later in the movie, we find that they learn that the laughter of children actually is more powerful, 10 times more powerful than the screams or the fear ever was. And so we talked about from that message, don't feed the lions. The lions are our fears, that we actually can't feed those fears, but we must learn to transmute them. And so we have this Sunday, I knew that this Sunday I wanted to look at the movie Coco. How many people have seen Coco? If you have not seen Coco, it is on Netflix. And I'm telling you, I mean, first of all, you need to watch it. I'm telling you, like, get your tissues. Oh my God. Like that's, you know, I mean, I'm a Cancer, I'm water sign, so, you know, we watery anyway. But I'm telling you, like, that movie will mess you up. So we're going to talk about Coco. It's such a beautiful story. It's such a beautiful story. And in this story, we meet this young man named Miguel. And he's born into a family in Mexico, a family of shoemakers. They have actually a wonderful shoemaking business that was started by his great-great-grandmother. And we also find and we learn about this family that while they are a successful shoemaking family, there's something very unique about them, and it has to do with music. They actually have band music in this family because of something that happened back in the day. Miguel's great-great-grandmother, his great-great-grandfather was a musician, and he left the family and never came back. And so the great-great-grandmother hated music because of that. She said, you know, this music stuff, this foolishness, we will not have music in our homes and in our family and in our lives because it destroyed my life. It made me a single mother. And so the generations go on, and there's this ban on music, and it's forbidden, and it's hardcore. His grandmother, Grandmother Imelda, she's like really hardcore and actually mean. She yells at the mariachi people that are just walking down the street. They're not even at the house. She's like, no music, right? So it's terrible. And so, interestingly enough, the way life works and the way families work, this young brother, Miguel, was born into this family with a love for music. Yes. And he was born with this love of music, but he knew he had to keep it hidden, and so he did. He made this makeshift guitar. And he also idolized the great musician of Mexico in this story, Ernesto de la Cruz. And he actually had this altar that he made to De La Cruz. He would watch De La Cruz's movies. He learned how to play guitar by watching De La Cruz play, and he would sing and play with the movies, and he was just obsessed. You know how it is, and especially when we're kids, right? When you have that thing or that person that you really idolize and look up to, and you just, you know, you get, I'm looking around for ages, but you know, the Michael Jackson era, everybody wanted to moonwalk, everybody, you know, pretend you would walk down the sidewalk and you thought the sidewalk was lighting up like you were in a Billie Jean video, right? You know that idea of how we are as children, and we get immersed into the world of the things that we love. And so that's what he did. And so he had determined that he was going to be a musician and he was going to play in the concert that was happening in his town, but he almost got caught, and so he had to hide under the family altar, the ofrenda, which is a beautiful. This is the other reason why you should watch the movie, because this movie just honors Mexican culture so well, and you learn about Dia de los Muertos and what that's all about. And so he hides under the altar and ends up knocking down the picture of his great-great-grandmother. Now, that picture of his great-great-grandmother, his grandfather, the one who left the family, his head is torn off in the picture. And so he ends up, the picture falls and the frame breaks, and he notices that the picture is folded over. And so while the head of his great-great-grandfather is missing, he sees, when he opens the fold, he sees that his grandfather was holding a guitar in the picture. So she hid the guitar and tore his face off, right? But what he finds, what's very significant about the guitar is it's a specific guitar that only owns his hero, his idol, Ernesto de la Cruz. And so now he's like, oh my goodness, I don't believe this. I knew that this must be an omen, this must be a sign, because Ernesto de la Cruz is my great-great-grandfather. That's why I'm a musician, that's why I love him, that's why I've always felt this connection to him. And so what ends up happening is that he gets out of the, from under the altar again, he breaks the picture. He goes to show his family, like, wait, this is a powerful thing. My great-great-grandfather is Ernesto de la Cruz. Of course, the family, because they banned music and aren't happy about music, his grandmother takes his guitar and breaks it. Again, no, I know, right? I know. And so she affirms that there will be no music in this family, and so he decides to run away. He runs away and he says, I don't want to be in this family anymore. And so this begins his call to adventure. And so there's a couple things that I want us to think about and look at. Now, the first thing with this story, this family story, I want you to think about your own families. Right? What are some of the family stories and beliefs that you were born into? Right? Maybe music wasn't banned in your family, but there could be other things. And maybe you identify with Miguel. Did you accept those beliefs and those stories that the family gave you that existed from generations, from your great-great-grandmother on down? Did you rebel against them? Did you leave home like Miguel left home? Well, my last question for you is, do you know the whole story? There's a wonderful story and an anecdote, and I'm sure many of you may have heard it told different ways, but it's a beautiful story that just illustrates something that we want to talk about today. There was a husband and wife, and they were at home. The wife was making dinner, and her husband was there with her, observing and loving on her as she's making this beautiful dinner. And he notices that she's making ham. And she cuts off 1 inch off of each side of the ham and puts it in the pan. And he's kind of confused, because he's like, first of all, why are you wasting money cutting all this meat off that we're going to eat? And so he asks her, he says, well, why'd you cut off both of the ends? And she says, well, that's how my mom always did it. That's how I learned. And he said, okay. So she gets curious and she calls her mom and she says, Ma, we were cooking the other day and I, cut off the ends of the ham like we always do. And, my husband, he was kind of confused and curious about that. He asked me, why do we do it? So I'm curious, why do we do it? She says, that's the way your grandmother taught me. That's the way we've always done it. And so her grandmother was no longer alive, but her grandfather was alive. So she said, well, I'm going to call him. I'm going to reach out and find out. Maybe he knows why it is that we cut off 1 inch off of both sides of this hand. So she calls her grandfather and she asks him the same question, and he thinks for a minute and he says, oh, your grandmother cut off the 2 inches so that it could fit in the pan that we had because it was too small for the hand. Do you know the whole story? There are so many things in our lives that we are doing, that we are thinking, that we are believing, ways that we are acting simply because that's the way my mother did it. That's the way your grandmother did it. That's the way your great-great-grandmother did it. Some of us, we have beliefs in lack and scarcity and beliefs that the bottom will drop out because that's the way my mother did it. That's the way my grandmother did it. And we never question it. We only live in the consciousness of that's how we've always done it. I think about it as a nation. I think we're in that same place right now. We're living in that same consciousness, that consciousness of an unchecked and unquestioned past. It's what the prophet Stevie Wonder calls a pastime paradise. Go back to that song. That's what he's singing about. Been spending most of our lives living in a pastime paradise, glorifying days long gone behind. Confederate flag is glorifying days long gone behind. And in truth, because we have not healed things in this country, we're living in that same consciousness. That's the way we've always done it. There's always been a man in the White House. That's the way we've always done it. That's going to change. But in every family and in every generation, in every nation, is born a Miguel. And so Miguel begins this call to adventure. And I specifically use that term call to adventure because it comes directly from Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey. And this is always the beginning. The call to adventure looks different depending on what the story is, but there's always something that pushes the character out. And what the call to adventure is leaving the known, going into the unknown. Always. And we go into the story further with Coco. What happens for Miguel is he finds himself in the land of the dead through a magical experience. He runs away from home and ends up in the land of the dead and meeting his ancestors. I was thinking about this in the context of how Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about it. In making any change, what we have to do when we're leaving the known to the unknown, what we're doing is we're leaving the familiar past and the predictable future and choosing an unknown new reality. I want you to hear that again because it's interesting. Familiar past. Now, we're used to that, right? Like, oh, I got to leave the past. That's story I've been keeping. But also the predictable future. Some of us, we think we know how life is going to turn out based on how it's already been. The predictable future, we got to let go of that too. And so again, Miguel runs away from home. He rejects his family. He was disrespectful. He said, I don't want to be in this family. And so the hero's journey is designed to reveal something within you that is seeking to be born. What we think it is, and what we think we know in the beginning turns out to be much different as we journey through the unknown. And so as I was working with this story, and again, I love this story and knew that we would use it for this series, a beautiful thing happened this week. I was walking down the sidewalk. I was in Fort Greene, and there on the sidewalk was a book. And this book is one of my favorite stories and also one of my favorite movies. The Namesake by Jhumpa Lahiri. And I was like, oh, that's cool, nice. And I put it in my gratitudes. And it wasn't until a couple days later that I realized, oh, this has everything to do with what we're talking about today. Because in The Namesake, we get a similar type of story. And I lift this story up as well as I lift up our immigrants and I lift up immigrant families because I think it's important as we look at Coco, which is honoring the Mexican culture. But this story is about this son, Nikhil Ganguly, who is born to immigrants from India. And we learn in the story with Nikhil that he has what's the first name that he was given, because according to tradition, he has to get his name from his grandmother. Right? His grandmother is in her 80s and she's in India. So it was going to take a while for word to get to her and word to get back on what the name would be. But his parents, in order to get him out of the hospital, had to give a name for his birth certificate. And so he was given the name Gogol. This was a name that his father gave him. And he was named, Gogol he was named after the Russian writer, Nikolai Gogol. And he eventually, by the time he started school, had his given name, Nikhil. But he was so used to, by that time, being 4 or 5 years old, being used to being called Gogol, that he told his teacher, no, my name is Gogol. Right? This is a funny story. When I was in second grade, I'll never forget this. We had, school had already started, and we had a new kid that came to school. And he came and joined the class, and his birth name was actually Aristides. And so the teacher introduced us and said, hello class, this is your new classmate, Aristides. And he corrected her and he said, no, my name is Boo. because that's what his family called him. And he was so used to being called Boo that he corrected the teacher. So same story. This is what happened with Nikhil and the name Gogol. Nikhil is his given name, his real name, if you will. But he was so used to that he corrected the teacher. And so they sent a note with him for his parents and said he prefers to be called Gogol, so that's what we'll call him. Well, by the time he gets to high school and he's in a writing class, he learns a little bit more about Nikolai Gogol. As a teenager, he learns that, as his teacher says in the movie, Gogol was reputed to be a hypochondriac. He was deeply paranoid, frustrated, friendless. He never married, and he fathered no children. Towards the end of his life, he proceeded to commit slow suicide by starvation. Needless to say, Nikhil, or Gogol, was a little upset with his parents. And so there's this beautiful scene where he's like, did y'all know about this man? You just named me after some crazy man. And his mother's upset because she's like, you shouldn't talk to us that way. We're your parents. And his father says, well, did your teacher also tell you that he was a genius? And he said, yeah, but that doesn't matter. Now, it's interesting, and again, why I lift this story up in terms of looking at immigrant families, what's happening is he's the firstborn, born in the United States. He's moving through this struggle of living in the Western world, but when he goes home, it's like he's in India, right? There's two different consciousnesses going on, right? And so he's trying to fit in, and he's trying to be there with his friends, but meanwhile, he lives in this world at home that no one else understands. And so he makes the decision when he graduates from high school to stop going by the name Gogol, but he takes it a step further. Instead of going by Nikhil, he wants to assimilate even further, and he begins to go by Nick, right? And so Nick goes on to college, and he goes on to become an architect, and he's in that place that all of us are at different points as young people where, our parents want to see us, but we're never around, and we don't call, and they're like, you don't call, and all of that stuff, right? Because we think our world is more important than anything else, especially family, right? We left home, we were trying to get away from that place, we're out of that place, we're out of home, and so we're living our lives being grown. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Yeah. He's in that place. But he goes to meet his parents, actually his girlfriend. What happened to him when he was a young person. He was taking a train ride in India, and there was an accident. And he almost lost his life. On that train, he was reading short stories by Gogol, and he was reading this one story, The Overcoat. And he used to say kind of cryptic things to the kids from time to time. He said, we all come out of Gogol's overcoat. They don't know what that means, but that's what he would say to them. So he goes on to tell them that this train ride, there was a terrible accident, and he almost lost his life. And they found him holding the page that he was reading of Gogol, The Overcoat. And it was because he was holding that page and kind of moving his hand that they were able to find him. And he went through, of course, a process of recovery. But he says, he asked him, he says, is that what it reminds you of when you call me Gogol? It reminds you of that accident? He said, no. He said, I named you Gogol, and what it reminds me of is everything that came after that. Because everything that came after that was a gift. I almost lost my life. And so the most precious thing I could name my firstborn child was Gogol, because it reminds me of that. And so further in the story, Nikhil's call to adventure begins. It doesn't even begin with that information, because unfortunately, his father transitions, and then he goes through a divorce. And I bring this up because, one, we find two similar things, where Miguel rejects his family and runs away. We find that Nikhil did the same thing. He rejected his upbringing. He rejected who he was. He rejected his name. He wanted to be Nick instead of Nikhil. He wanted to be Nick instead of Gogol. Even after hearing the story from his father, he was still living in that place of rejection. But what we find is that the call to adventure can look different ways. In this case, the call to adventure for Nikhil was his father's transition, and divorce is what spurred him from the known to the unknown. In the case of Miguel, he had some new information. He had this picture, and he had this disagreement with his family, this butting of heads with his family, that then led him into this place of running away and moved him into a powerful, powerful awareness. What he came to understand as he moved through this adventure in the land of the dead is that his great-great-grandfather wasn't Ernesto de la Cruz. He came to find out who his great-great-grandfather really was. He was a powerful musician. He actually found out that the man that he was idolizing was a criminal and a murderer. De la Cruz murdered his great-great-grandfather and stole his songs. Do you know the whole story? Right? See, even though he had this piece, and it was true, right? He had this piece about, I'm a musician and I love music and there's musicians in our family, right? He had that piece, but he still didn't know the whole story. And he had been rejecting his family, but as he goes through this adventure and he meets all of his other ancestors, all of the ancestors that he had seen on the ofrenda and learned their names, this aunt and this uncle and these cousins, he learned all their names and knew their faces, and now he's meeting them in this ancestral world. And what's so beautiful, I'm telling you, I was in tears the first moment I saw this. They immediately recognized him when they saw him. They said, Miguel, what are you doing here? These are generations that are going past. And if you just sit with that for a minute, that all of your aunts and uncles, your great-great-great-grandparents, they know you by name. They are proud of you, and they are working on your behalf. It's just powerful. You take nothing away from that movie. Just get that. And so each of us are on our very own hero's journey. Along this journey through the unknown, the thing we reject about ourselves or about our family will be understood and ultimately healed in ways that we could not have possibly imagined from the beginning. Miguel was right. His family didn't have the whole story, but he also discovered that he didn't have the whole story. And through discovering that he didn't have the whole story, he fell in love with his family again. He fell into this place of honoring the traditions of his family, and he began to exemplify and pass the same traditions on. He's now teaching his younger cousins the truth of all of the ancestors and telling them name by name and showing them that you come from people, right? Showing that you come from a deep tradition. And the namesake, Nikhil, was right. He was right to find his own way. He was right to have that thing that is within us naturally, that I need to leave home, that I need to set my own course, that I need to establish who I am, but he didn't know the real significance of his name. He had to learn that there is a way to live in this world that honors and embraces his identity as a son of immigrants and as a citizen in the United States. So finally, as spiritual people, we must allow our adventure to do the very same thing. We must learn to live in this world, but not of this world. We must learn to live in and understand, and I think this is so important for where we are in this country, to understand that while we teach oneness, and that's a number one principle of New Thought, that all is one, right? That God is, and all things are within this thing we call God, or the all in all, we also must learn to honor diversity. It's both and. You can't have one without the other. When the one expresses itself in multiplicity. When the one expresses itself in diversity. When the one expresses itself in an infinite number of colors. When the one expresses itself as male and female. When the one expresses itself as straight and gay. When the one expresses itself in multiplicity. And unfortunately, and I won't harp on this too long, but what I'm finding within the New Thought community is some people are confused about that. We've made it very clear here at CSC as we continue to teach and apply the teachings to what's actually happening in our country, whether it be politically, but also applying it to what's happening with us individually, that this is the true understanding. Oneness is the absolute truth. All things fade into one. Science proves that. Everything comes from the unified field, from the ground of all being. Beautiful. But science also shows us that as it expresses, it begins to express in all of these different ways. And at each level of expression, as you get further and further away from the one, there's more multiplicity. There's more variety. And so it's important for us to understand and embrace that and not spiritual bypass, because it doesn't feel good to talk about race. Not spiritual bypass because it doesn't feel good to talk about pay inequality, not spiritual bypass, because it doesn't feel good to talk about the fact that everyone doesn't have, by human right, forget the Constitution, human right. But we recognize that this is the journey that we must take. And so there could be something, as I said earlier before the song, you may be disturbed by what's happening in the world. Just like Miguel was disturbed. You may be disturbed, just like Nikhil was disturbed. Something just doesn't feel good. Something is pushing you out. Those are the to the unknown. And you're going to learn some things there that it's not everything that you thought it was going to be. You will come out different, and what I guarantee, because my life has proven it to me, there's a lot that I rejected, particularly when we think about spiritually. And I spent a lot of time away from church, and I spent a lot of time even away from my family, because I didn't believe as they believe, and I didn't want to get into arguments, and all of that stuff. But as I went through my journey, and it was a journey, right? And I came out on the other side and came back with the gold. I came back with the, Joseph Campbell calls it the elixir in the hero's journey. I also came back with this beautiful and profound harmony. I came back with this beautiful and profound love for my family, for my roots, for what gave birth to me, for what established me. And I'm in this place now where I can honor my tradition while firmly standing in who and what I am. No longer rejecting it. There was a time I would not use the word God because I didn't want people to think that I was rocking with the God that hated people. I didn't want people to think that I was aligned with the God of judgment. I didn't want people to think that I was in alignment with that God, so I stopped using it, cutting myself off from the very power source. But I'm different now. Again, I thought I knew something about something when I started my journey. But it took me on a path, a beautiful adventure. And each and every one of us are on that same path and have the opportunity to take that path. But it starts with this understanding. Do you know the whole story? And the truth is we don't. But through this path, through this adventure, we will learn it. I invite everyone to stand. We take a breath into our bodies and we exhale. We breathe in and we breathe out. Mother, Father, God, we stand here right now remembering and recognizing that there is in truth one mind, one power, one presence that is working in all, through all, and as all, expressing as all, expressing in diversity and multiplicity. I recognize this truth, and as I recognize this truth, I remember and unify with the idea, with the truth, that we are one with you and one of you. My sister, my brother, you are one with the divine, and you are one of the divine, created in its likeness and image, created to create, created with the same powers and abilities, created with the same rights and privileges. You are honored, you are loved, you are provided for, and you are protected. I stand in this reality of our oneness with the all that is right here and right now. And because I know that this thing is, and because I know that we are one with it, I now speak the word that all is well, all is well, all is well in the mind of God. And as God's mind is my mind, as God's mind is the mind I used to think, I now declare that all is well in my life. I now declare that all is well in the life of my sister, that all is well in the life of my brother. I now declare that all is well in the life of the city. I now declare that all is well in this nation. I now declare that all is well on this planet. All is well, all is well, all is well, because God's mind is our mind. Right here and right now, we allow the knowing of God. That thing that knows how to figure it out, we let that be our knowing right now. We now allow the knowing of God. That thing that knows that the answer already exists, we allow it to be our knowing right here and right now. We now allow the knowing of God. That thing that knows that peace is possible, we let it to be peace in our hearts and in our minds, and then peace in our lives. That knowing of God that knows that unity is possible, that equality is possible, we now allow that unity and that equality to begin to work on the inside, to begin to work on us. And as it begins to work on us, we will allow it to work in our cities and work in our families. We now allow the knowing of God that knows that abundance is, that there is more than enough. And everywhere we look across the cosmos and throughout the universe, there is more than enough. We now allow that knowing to be the knowing in, through, and as us. Knowing that we have everything that we need. Knowing that we are prosperous. And as we live in that knowing, as we live in that abundance, as we live in that prosperity, we now expect to see that prosperity spread out all throughout the land. We now expect to see that prosperity turn into policy at the legislative level. We now choose to see that prosperity turn into new laws, new executive orders that bring more peace and harmony and abundance for all people of all strata, of all colors, of all races, of all hues. We now allow that to be the absolute truth, as we know that God's knowing is the only knowing. I am so grateful and thankful for this word, because I recognize that my word can never return unto me void. So I now release it with expectation. I now release it with an absolute confident knowing. That absolute confident knowing, I don't go back to the stove and check to see if it's done. I know it is done. I live that it's done. I expect that it's done. And I watch and I wait and know that in my lifetime, I will see the fruit of this prayer come to bear. And so with joy and thanksgiving, we lift up our voices and we say, amen, Ashe. And so it is. So it is. Thank you.
Have a seat, everybody. Do you know the whole story? How much of your life have you been living based on unlimited information? Based on the fear story, based on the lack story, based on the unworthiness story? Do you know the whole story? I remember when my father transitioned. I wasn't going to the funeral, I'm gonna be honest with you. My father and I had an interesting relationship my whole life, and I told PG, I said, I'm not going. He said, oh, okay. Seems like somebody got some work to do. And I said, I know you're right, but I ain't doing no work. And then I realized, I said, I cannot let a half story of what I think this is to be the thing that dictates my relationships with men, my understanding of male energy. I got to do the work, so I did the work, y'all. And I said to PG, I said, okay, we going. He said, well, I already knew that. And I said, okay, I'm ready to go. And when I got there, back to my hometown that I had not been to in years, I realized that there were so many people that knew my father in a way that I never knew my father. That told me stories about me and my father that I didn't remember. That allowed me in that knowingness, in that forgiveness, to get to a point where I could see more of the story, where I could be his descendant on the earth, where I could use the gifts that he gave me that I refused to use before because he was an amazing musician. Do you know the whole story, or are you letting a limited story keep you from your good, keeping you blocked, keeping you small, keeping you think, oh, this is all that I am, a rejected child from her father? Who wants to walk around in rejection? I know I don't. So if there's a story that you're holding on to, an old story, a half story, a half truth, let it go. Or do the work to release it so that you can get more of the truth, the real story. Let's live this week from the real story. We're not broken. We're not being tested by God. Right? We are not lacking. We are not limited. We are not small. And as a people that come from powerful descendants, we are not weak, inferior. Hey. This week, walk out knowing more of the story. Thank you, Pastor Graham.
In this moment, it is time to prepare for giving. If there's anyone, if you need an envelope or you need a pen, please raise your hand. Our ushers are happy to serve you. You, of course, can give online. You can give from your phones. Just go to our website, celebrationgsc.org, and select the option to give, or scroll down to the giving section. If you would like to text to give, it's very easy, 347-744-9500 to text to give. I just want to share this very, very simple idea with you around giving. Many times we find ourselves in a situation where we think we don't have enough, or we feel like we don't have enough, or it looks like we don't have enough because we know what our obligations are and we don't see that in the bank account. Yes. And one of the most beautiful things you can do in that moment, instead of focusing on I don't have, Eric Butterworth teaches us to think give. The moment that you think you don't have, if you think give, then that turns your mind to what do I have? Now, if you don't have enough money, you may only have a penny in your account, and so you can't give a penny. That's fine. But there are so many other things that you can give. Whenever you feel like you don't have enough, think give. How can I give of my time? How can I give of my love? How can I give of my presence? Because when you think give, that turns your mind to having. And the person that has is the person that will receive more. That's the principle. So whenever you're in this moment, think give, and then give what you can from joy. Again, give what you can as joy. Give what you can easily and effortlessly with pure willingness, and I guarantee you, you will be met with more receiving. And hear me, if it's money that you need and you're giving out free hugs, the money will show up, right? If it's hugs that you need and you're giving money, the hugs will show up. Whatever it is that you need, it will be translated into your life in exactly the way that you need it. And when we give from this way, what can we affirm? All the money that I use returns to me multiplied in a never-ending cycle of increase and enjoyment. With that, I ask us to take our ushers to come forward, and let's take a very joyous song.
Let us extend our hands, and through our hands, this life beat, this life force that is never extinguished. Thank you, Mother, Father God, for the givers and for the gifts. As we extend our hands and our hearts, we open to a new realization that there is more of the story. We open our minds to know that we are more than we first perceived ourselves to be. We open our minds to realize that we are entitled to more miracles, more joy, more bliss, more ease, more abundance, and perfect health. We open our minds and our hearts, and we look and we stand in anticipation of the ways in which this God shows up. Thank you, Mother, Father God. As we go out this week, we look for the expanded version of ourselves. From this place of awareness, I say amen, ashe, and amen. So it is.
Let's sing this together. I give my love. I give my time, more time available to me. I give my treasure, doors are open for me. As I give, I receive. Yes, it's all coming right back to me. Right back to me. Just as easy as a breeze. Right back to me. coming right back. Y'all can just send me an email about this tomorrow because I see your face. You give a lot, and so something coming right back to you right now.
Hello, pastors. So this community is grateful for everything that you have allowed God to express through you. And so 11 got rescheduled, and so we decided to proceed with what we plan to give you. And that is...
Well, first, let me say, we have been so impressed and inspired by your unwavering commitment and dedication to CSC and to all of us, and how you have lovingly guided us toward expanding our lives and knowing the truth of who we are. We're eternally grateful. Please accept this token of our gratitude for the both of you. We have visioned for you a soothing staycation that leads us to 2 nights at a beach resort and spa, a fun rental car, 6 delectable meals, head-to-toe massages, and a whole lot of love and relaxation. We invite you to choose the mini getaway of your dreams. Nancy, tell them how much we've raised for this vision. $3,111.11.
Very rare that I'm at a loss for words. Just thank you all. Thank you all. Out of you all can never really know what it takes to be in this role and what we do. And when I say that, well, we think about you all every day. We pray for you all every day. We see the best for you every day. I mean, many of you know, I'll tell you, you were just on my mind the other day. And it's this connection that we have with you all and to you all that's inseparable. It will never change.
Thank you, Tissue.
Okay, so I'm out. Oh, okay, all right. Pass them around. And I can be honest in this moment that we need to practice what we preach, because one of my first thoughts was, when in the world are we going to be able to do this, right? And so I will practice what we preach, because we preach and teach self-care, and we're always admonishing all of you to take care of yourselves and do those things, and we're doing what we need to do on a day-to-day basis. But we have not taken a vacation in these 6 years. We said we would do it after year 5. So thank you all for making that intention possible. And we'll post lots of pictures. Well, not all pictures. Some pictures.
I just want to say I love you all. And when we got this idea, we didn't know your names. We just said yes to creating it and knew that you would be here. And we have delighted every day in holding the truth for you, in reminding you that you're perfect whole, that God loves you. It is so important that we remember we're connected and we have power and that you're worthy. If you do nothing today, walk in your worthiness today. And we will continue to hold the truth of you. And we never waver, even when you want us to. So thank you all for this amazing surprise. As Genia already says, a beautiful surprise. We love you. Thank you.
We love you!
And y'all want me to sing after that? Let's all stand. We will reschedule the Summer Lovin' event. It will be next month. So watch social media for the update, the email. We'll let you know when it's going to be. It will be in August. So be prepared. Maybe we'll take a vacation before then. So we'll be ready. If anything has come up for you, if there's something that is preventing you from knowing you are so loved and so connected and so powerful, write it down and leave it on the altar so you make room so that you can receive the whole story of how amazing you are. And when you write it down, when you release it, whatever it is, you don't have to beg God. God is standing there right where you want to be. You don't have to beseech God. It's saying, come this way. You don't have to barter with God. It says everything you are is all that was created. When you release it and you let it go, what do we say every week here?
All things are possible.
That's new. Whew. Now, all things are possible. Now every little thing is, it's so possible. 'Cause I know who I am, and I know